Speaking of Cults podcast is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from it is at the user's own risk. The views, information, or opinions expressed by the host and guests are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical or other professional advice. Hello and welcome to Speaking of Cults, the cult podcast that you didn't even know you needed in your life as badly as you do. Well, thanks for your viewership and for coming along and listening to us today. And we're going to get right into it. And as you can see, I am joined this week by Cass Filetti. And she goes by the moniker Theta Novis. You might have seen her around on some other channels doing some interviews talking about her experiences with the Church of Scientology, and specifically in Australia, in Sydney, Brisbane, in this, in that region. I'm geographically challenged when it comes to Australia, but I know some things. So anyway, Cass, first off, welcome to my podcast. Welcome to my show. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now. So first off, why don't we go ahead and start by telling everybody kind of who you are and what your connection is with Scientology specifically.
Okay, so basically, I live in Brisbane. I pretty much joined Scientology back in 2021. Okay. So about a year before, though, a year before I actually joined Scientology, so in about August 2020, I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues. I grew up in a very controlling type household where my dad and my stepmother would be basically very controlling of my life. I couldn't go out anywhere. I couldn't go see friends. I had to grow up pretty quickly. Used to get screamed at by my stepmother, and I always felt like my dad had a lot of control over my life, even when I wasn't living with him. So originally I'm from Sydney, but I moved to Brisbane about 13 years ago. Yeah, he had a lot of control over my life. At least that's how I felt. In August 2020, I decided to actually go see a therapist, like a psychologist. She was a music therapist. And I saw her therapist. So it's like
using music for therapy.
It's more using music as like a way of communication type thing. Okay. So like if people find it hard to sort of communicate their feelings through normal methods, they sort of use music to help with that. Because when I was growing up, as a teenager, to deal with what I was going through, I would write songs, I'd write music to help me cope. So that's sort of why I decided I was a bit interested in that. I've always been not into medicating, or like I was against that in a sense, even before Scientology. Yeah. More so just personally, as in like I had no issues before Scientology with people taking medication, for their mental illness and stuff like that. My views changed though when I got into Scientology with that. But yeah, I had no issue with other people at that point in time. It was just personally, I would rather just not, unless it was absolutely required.
Sure.
So I saw.
I know exactly how. Yeah, totally get that. Was it a distrust of medications for you personally, or what was the idea as to why you thought, I don't want to go in that direction?
I think it was more just I wanted to feel like me, not like as in I still wanted to be me. I didn't want sort of that influence of medication. At least that's sort of my thinking of it. That could be completely.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I think more along those kind of lines rather than it was just I wanted to still feel like me. So
had you had experience with other people who had maybe bad experiences with psychotropics, or where did that idea come from?
Not that I'm aware of. I honestly have no idea.
Oh, wow. Okay, no problem. I just got curious for a second about that. I'm not at all criticizing you for the point of view. Everybody can have autonomy over what kind of medications they want. I was just curious where that was coming from.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
I'd be fascinated to know as well. I'm not really sure.
All right, fair enough. So, okay, so you were pursuing some help. You were getting some help, and you decided to go in the direction of music therapy,
Yep.
and that lined up with your sort of personality and ideas about songs and music and stuff, which I could totally get on board with. I
Yep.
wrote a whole book of songs while I was on the RPF, and I don't have a musical bone in my body, man. Like these are not good songs, but they were songs. They came. I needed a creative outlet, and I managed to sneak it in literally while I was walking between buildings and stuff like that. I would be writing and formulating in my head lyrics to songs all day long. That there was like a 3 or 4 month period where that was a real thing for me. So I
Wow.
guess I can relate on that level at least.
Yep.
So
Um,
okay, so you're getting
yep.
therapy now. How old were you when this was happening?
So that was when I was getting therapy. I was 31. No, wait, 30, sorry. Not 31. That was 30. Yeah. So it had been, and then while I was getting therapy, I ended up actually just cutting off all my connections with my dad, my stepmother. I haven't spoken to my mother in over 20 odd years, so I'm 33 now. I haven't spoken to her since I was like 11. So I
Oh,
don't really have my grandmother who on my dad's side, who I was close with. She passed away in 2009. So that she was pretty much my closest family that I had. So pretty much I have no other family. My cousins on my dad's side, I have never like barely even met. So
sure.
yeah, I pretty
Okay.
much, yeah.
Can I ask what happened with your family? Just again, curious. What did your mom leave, or what happened?
So my parents got divorced when I was like 9.
Ah,
Then my stepmother, sorry, my soon-to-be stepfather was pretty somewhat verbally abusive and like grabbed my brother as well at one point. A couple of years later, that my mum was, yeah, she was dating him, and then they ended up getting married later on. But before that happened, my dad also got remarried as well. Um, and yeah, basically, there was a really bad incident that happened in 2001. That was when I was 11. Um, and whereby like the police came,
oh
and
wow.
then they took our mobiles off us to stop us from communicating. It was sort of, I don't exactly remember what happened that night. Just that my mother wanted us to stop communicating with our dad. And so the police came, and then the police took our mobiles off us. And then my dad and my stepmother drove, because they were living in Canberra at the time, they drove to Sydney to come pick us up from school, me and my brother, he's a couple of years older than me. Um, and basically, yeah, they came, picked us up from school, and then took us back to Canberra to go live with them. We never went back to live with my mother. Um, Basically, then my dad ended up getting full custody eventually of us. But then we kept moving around Australia. My mum kept tracking us down wherever we went. Pretty sure I've been followed by a PI who knows how many times, but I didn't really know at the time. It wasn't until many years later that I sort of
Wow.
figured that out.
What an unusual circumstance. Your mom
Yeah.
chasing you around Australia, trying to find you and keep you away from your biological dad?
Yeah, it's a weird kind of like, I don't know
Huh.
whether or not she was doing it to get us so then she would get paid child support, because before that she was getting paid child support.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a
okay.
whole big
It's a whole big kind of
mess of,
messy, sordid family
yeah.
drama kind of thing. Okay, I get it. I get it.
So,
Okay, fair
yeah,
enough. Well, again, it just kind of backstory to you and how you are, and who you are. So broken home, kind of not so great family
somewhat,
situation, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And then, yeah, well, when I went to live with my dad and my stepmother would always pick on me for a lot of different things, like that she viewed that I would do wrong, and she would yes, basically yell and scream at me, sometimes throw things at me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad would have to sometimes restrain her. Like it felt like I was always getting in trouble for like something or another. Like one time I remember I got in trouble for apparently giving her the evil eye when I was like tired and just looking at her. So that kind of, I got yelled at for that. And then ever since that point, I found it very, very difficult to look people in the eye. I would
Huh.
look them in the mouth rather than in the eye because I was afraid I was giving them like a bad look, and that sort of really affected me. It wasn't until sort of I went to therapy and stuff that I sort of started realizing these things that
Mm,
had happened to me, and then yeah, and
sure.
then
Sure.
my basically the last straw with my dad was basically when he decided after my first therapy session, he gave me a call at work and was like, oh, you're at work now, that's fine. Like, I'll give you a call at another time. We can discuss what was basically said in therapy. So he wanted to talk about what I was talking about in therapy, and I thought that was a massive, control thing. And
Sure.
I just why not have like, yeah, it just kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I can't even talk into a therapist without him wanting to know what was said.
Right. Okay. I get
So,
that. I get that. So not exactly a supporting relationship.
no.
Okay. At least as
Yeah.
far as you're concerned. And
Yeah.
and you've given good reasons why. So it makes sense.
I mean, he was pretty overprotective. He has done some good things, but then yeah, it was sort of like I just found like he didn't want to change or admit anything that he's sort of done wrong. So I didn't see him, if he had changed or, made some effort to sort of change, then, I would
Hmm.
open back up again. But yeah,
Yeah,
until
I
he
get
sort of
that.
does
Yeah.
that, it's a bit hard to, you know,
Yeah, some people get a little set in their ways, don't they?
yep.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, okay, so this being your backstory, then I can see how there could be seeds of something Scientology would want to do something with. What was it about? Well, first off, how'd you get wrangled into that?
Yep. So basically, after 6 months, or 6 months, 4 months, I don't know. Basically, by December of 2020,
Hmm.
um, my music therapist moved to. I think she started her own like clinic, but I couldn't go see her. Like she had to go visit people. I was too far away and stuff. So I ended up stopping all therapy. And then for a few months, I was struggling quite badly with my mental health, um, like not to the point of self-harm or anything like that. Just I was just having a lot of trouble with that. At the same time, I was not happy in my job. I'd been in that job for about 10 years or just over 10 years. I decided to quit my job in January 2021. And then in about April, I started looking at just random self-help groups, um, from Raelianism to other crazy, I don't know, other random sort of things.
The whole
Um,
spectrum of pseudoscientific, pseudo whatever garbage nonsense stuff out
yeah.
there. The
And
whole range
then,
of it.
and
Crystals,
then, yeah.
magnets, quantum theory.
And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, I was looking into all these different things. I mean, I'd
Sure.
heard of Scientology from, I don't know, probably 13, 14 years earlier, at least, if not, longer, from South Park. And I saw it was like a documentary, an Australian one. I think I've seen it again since I've left, but they were
Hmm.
talking about like the Sea Org and the ship, and that's pretty much all I sort of remembered. And these people like working all these ridiculous hours is sort of what I knew about it, but I didn't really, I'd heard of Xenu and stuff like that, but
Right.
I didn't really know much about Scientology. I didn't really, yeah, I didn't know
Right.
that much.
No,
Um,
I don't think people watch South Park and then take it as a let's commit this to memory. We're going to get tested on this. They just kind of, wow, Scientology, that's some whack stuff. Okay, well, moving right along and proceed to, not necessarily remember a whole lot, maybe Xenu, maybe personality tests or something. It sort
yeah.
of takes repetition to kind of get across to people that it's not just kooky or kind of this weird sci-fi thing. It's actually dangerous.
Mm.
Yeah.
Also, so I then started a new job with the same company, but I was instead of being in like a manager position with a lot of stress, I was just doing security. And then I was doing shift work and night shifts, which I had not done before, so I was not used to that. So I was also I ended up getting very, very sleep deprived and only sleeping like an hour or two a night or a day for like weeks. So
Oh, that's really bad.
at the same time, I was like, yeah. And then I was actually reading a book called Terror, Love, and Brainwashing by, I don't know who it was by, I can't remember.
Alexandra Stain. I've had her on my podcast. She's
Oh, there
awesome.
you go. So it's
Yeah.
actually, I was reading some of that book. I didn't get that far into it, but
Okay.
I think that also sparked my curiosity, of a mix of like between all of that, me struggling with my mental health, and then I thought it was a great idea to go on and do a personality test online. So,
Sure.
so come to June. So June, it was like June 2021 was when I did my personality test online.
Okay.
I did get like a phone call from my local org, after that, but I ignored them.
Oh,
Because
you
I
did.
was,
Did
yeah,
they
I
give
was a
you,
bit,
did it, okay, actually, hang on a second. Did they give you the personality test results online?
they did, but it doesn't really explain them. Like it doesn't have like what the actual things are along the bottom. It just
Right.
gives you like A, B, C, D. So it
So you
doesn't
see the
really sort
graph,
of,
but
yeah,
that's it. You didn't no explanation for it.
yeah, it's not really like an explanation. So
Right.
yeah, they called me. I also got some emails from Bridge, so Bridge Publications.
From Bridge after
Yeah,
the personality test. Okay. Okay.
yeah. So when I think I didn't answer, I'm not really sure how they got in contact with me, but then they were like, "Oh, here's like a free Dianetics thing," and I was like, "I can't download it." So I emailed them back. So I was like, "I can't download this," and then that's sort of how they were like, because they had kept just sending me generic emails going, "You've got your personality test, like." Give us like a, we can, you do like a consultation,
Mm-hmm.
um and all that kind of stuff. But then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
once I emailed them back, I guess they figured I'm a real person, so they would then determine, they then, Bridge was like calling me a bit, and then not too much, but they would call me every so often. Then they started messaging me on WhatsApp, and then I'm like fairly introverted type of person, and so I preferred texting and stuff like that. So I was messaging them back and forth, but then I was sort of not really, ignoring them for a few days and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I wasn't really biting into sort of getting to that, because they were trying to sign me up for self-analysis, at that point, the
For the
extension
book or
course.
for the extension course to get you to
Yeah, because
do
they're
like the
doing,
correspondence
yep,
course on the book. Yeah. Okay.
yep. But yeah, I wasn't sort of,
You weren't
I
biting
didn't
for
really
that.
want to. Yeah, I wasn't. And then at one point in August 2021, so not a couple months later, from texting back and forth, and then I ended up at the podiatrist office. Yeah, basically I fainted because I hadn't eaten, hadn't didn't sleep very well, and then the guy was talking about some medical stuff, which makes me kind of queasy. So I was up, sitting up on like the chair type thing, and then he turned around for 2 seconds, and I was like, I don't feel too well, and then I went off the bench, off the seat thing, landed on my head. Fortunately, part of my, like, my legs and stuff were still up on like the chair thing, so I think the impact wasn't as bad as what it could have been.
Wow.
And then I wake up because I like completely passed out, and then I'm like, what the heck happened? And then so I ended up in hospital. It only ended up being like muscular type things, so I just went to my physio. So I was very fortunate in that regard.
Mm.
But at that point, I was like, I might as well sign up for this, because like that's sort of when it sort of broke me, and I went,
Hmm.
what do I have to lose? And then like I signed up for it,
Okay. And
and
what
then
you were signing up
yep,
for the extension course?
yeah, the
Yep.
self-analysis extension course,
Sure.
yep,
Yeah, pretty
yep.
harmless. It's not like they're dragging you into the building. You haven't even seen a Church of Scientology yet.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And
But this is
then
all done online. That's interesting. Yeah, of course it is. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I remember them setting this stuff up and doing this. This was just not part of the operation I was particularly part of. But yeah, that makes sense. And then people were texting with you off of the reach you gave after the email.
yeah, so they would be messaging me on WhatsApp and emailing me.
Right. Right.
And then basically I got introduced to, when I signed up for the extension course, to another person at Bridge. So he was going to be helping me if I had any questions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like I wasn't sure about something or needed help. I could email him and he would basically help me.
Was he the person administering the lessons on the extension course, or was that just a
No.
random
So
person?
he was from Bridge. So you had two people from Bridge. One is like sort of she like signs people up for Bridge.
Yeah.
Um, Funnily enough, it was I think Doug and Joni actually did a call with Mary Jane from Bridge um not that long ago, a few months back,
Mm-hmm.
where they called that Dianetics number for the from the VHS tape. That person was the one that signed me up for the self-analysis. So she's
Okay.
the one. But yeah, you can kind of hear how they sort of talk and whatnot. But yeah.
Right, right.
Um, my extension course though was through LA org,
Through
even though I'm in
LA org.
Australia. Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
of
So
so they
you're,
would sign you up through LA org.
of course they would. Okay. Probably easiest for them it being a Sea Org organelle, but geez. Because your closest geographical location was Brisbane.
Yep. But
Okay. And
even
how far away was the actual physical church from you at this point?
where was I living? Still a fair distance, so maybe like 40, 50 kilometers. So like it probably take about 40 minutes, 45 minutes to drive.
Yeah, that's how I used to go to Santa Barbara when I was first doing classes. I mean, that's a lot closer than LA.
Yep.
I'm surprised. I mean, the whole point of the extension course line and selling people extension courses is to get them in the building at the closest local opportunity, right? But that's not
Yep.
how they always play the game because there's all this like rivalry between the organizations and because they want the money, even when it's $10, they don't think to logistically like, oh, where should I send this person? Because they live in Brisbane. Anyway, it's just kind of funny to me the inefficiencies of this whole setup with these
Well,
guys.
funnily enough, though, they don't have, they weren't doing the extension, like they didn't have an extension course supervisor at Brisbane org. They actually did them all through the Sydney AO because they
You're
just didn't have
kidding.
enough staff. Yeah.
Oh, come
So they
on.
did them
They didn't have a
through
guy
Sydney.
at Brisbane to do extension. I mean, it's not like this is a heavy traffic job. You know what I mean? They're getting lessons in that are like on a piece of paper from every person who's doing extension courses, which is what, 20 people? I mean,
Yep.
that's hilarious to me. They didn't even have that at
The
Brisbane. How many
closest
staff were at Brisbane? I mean, I know we're jumping a little bit, but how
15,
okay.
15.
Yeah, it's a
Yep.
little silly. They can't deal with. But anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Please carry on here.
I
How
think
happens next?
the DED of delivery and exchange, I think she was sort of doing some of the extension courses, but I don't think she was marking them at all. I think she might have been sending some of them maybe to the AO. I'm not really sure, but I know
Wow,
she had something to do with all of that. So
for sure.
yeah.
Okay, fair
Um,
enough. So you sign up, you're on this extension course, and life is not exactly a bed of roses for you with the sleep problems and fainting and the medical stuff. So what happened? Next?
um Basically, well, I managed to get the sleeping thing under control, but that was
Oh yeah.
purely because my the person who had replaced me in my old job needed some help back in the office there. So I ended up going and working with him for a couple of weeks, and then that was all like normal day shifts. So I was waking up at the same time. So that helped me get back into a normal rhythm.
Oh,
Um,
you switched jobs into a night shift job.
So basically, I was working for a security company. I was there originally when I started with that company, I was their finance assistant, so in their finance department. Then, after about 7 years of that, I became the finance manager. So I was in charge of all the finances, payroll, etc., for the company,
Sure.
which was quite stressful. And then I decided to quit that, but then I was still, quite, like I'm not going to say good standing because that's like Scientology, but like I was still like, quite friendly with them and stuff like that. So I ended up working at another place for them, but it wasn't all night shift. It was a mix of days, nights, and afternoons.
Uh,
Um,
okay. That's
but I wasn't used to
There's
doing it
just messed
overnights
up your
and
whole circadian rhythm thing and all of that.
yeah, and then I would be trying to stay awake during the day. Stay awake all night, even on my days off. And then I was drinking Red Bull to help me stay
Oh,
awake. But then that ends up doing the wrong thing. So it was sort of like,
no,
yeah.
that's
Now
Sea
I've
Org
learnt my
lifestyle now.
lesson now.
Yeah, no, that's you jumped right to Sea Org. Okay. So yeah, I would literally power myself through days with 5 hour energy drinks until I actually had a moment where I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And then I was like, okay, I got to stop doing this. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, I get it. I get it. It messes with your body in significant ways when you do that.
Yeah. Now,
Okay. So
now I don't even, yeah.
you got yourself steadied off of that. And then, okay. So how does Scientology enter the picture?
So after basically it took me about 9 months or so to do my self-analysis extension course because I was at university at this point at the same time.
Mm,
So I was always putting that as a priority, my university, and
sure.
then Scientology wasn't too happy about that. And they would always try and push me to do my extension course lessons and basically, yeah, they kept pushing me, pushing me, pushing me, and eventually I finished that extension course. I think that was maybe March 2022, or it was either March or April, something like that,
Okay.
in 2022. And then after I finished that, I did, I think, Problems of Work and then a new slant on life, and that only took me a couple of weeks each. So that was a lot quicker. Then I signed on to Dianetics, Modern Science of Mental Health. And at the same
Wow.
time,
Mhm.
they had this Zoom call. So Bridge themselves didn't set up there's like a Facebook group and a Zoom call for other sort of new people that are on extension courses and are fairly new to Scientology. It was
Oh,
run
really?
by so it was run by like a public member. Um, and basically they'd go on, they'd talk about wins, they'd talk about like just different bits and pieces. Um, and yeah, it was sort of like, I don't know, felt good, I guess, to sort of go in and hear these wins and stuff like that. So, and
Sure.
talk about this sort of stuff with other people. So I think that also started pushing me into Scientology more because I was
Mm.
like, oh, these people are having good wins with this, they're, improving their lives, etc. So yeah, that sort of helped push me in and
That's a new one. I have not heard about Zoom calls from Bridge with extension course students. That's a new one on me. That's interesting that they're doing. I mean, obviously makes sense, makes sense. Anything they can do to keep people going along or encourage them in their baby steps, especially since COVID and I guess how many people were on the call and they weren't all Australian, I'm assuming.
no, a lot of them were American. The Bridge would call in. I know that at least a couple of people from Bridge listening into the calls, and they'd be recorded and I guess sent to Bridge, to Scientology.
Mm, okay.
There was probably between 15 to up until over 40, maybe sometimes 50 people on these calls. Most of the time, it would probably sit around 20, depending
Okay.
on the week. Also, they would have guest speakers come on. So they've had like Joy, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Michael Chan. Even I don't know if Grant Cardone's ever been on one. I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Mm.
But other sort of prominent Scientologists to come actually go and talk to people.
Really? Talking to extension course students?
Yes, to people that are through Bridge. Yeah. So
Hmm.
it's a really kind of
Well, it's
odd,
interesting to me. It's
yeah.
very interesting to me. I find that very fascinating. The
And a
chant
lot of these,
usually was the
yeah,
chant man is usually like high level OT8 stuff. So it's interesting he's going all the way down to the bottom as well. I just didn't know that was happening.
yep.
Hmm.
So what was I going to say? So some
So
of
there were
these
multiples
people,
of these.
yeah, he's been on several times
Oh, but you
to
were
these
going to
calls.
multiples of these as well.
Oh, yep. It's like an every week thing. They're still doing them as well. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. So somebody had a bright idea. Hey, how do we get extension course students more engaged? Zoom calls. That's not a
Yep.
bad idea on their part. That's not a bad
And
idea.
then,
I was on an extension
yep.
course. It took me 2 years to get through the damn thing before I never did finish it before they finally wrangled me into the org and got me signed up on services, right? I couldn't stand those extension courses. They would drive me crazy.
So some of these people, actually, a couple of them finished all their basic books and lectures extension courses before they had ever stepped foot in an org, and under a year.
Wow.
So these people
That's
then are
interesting.
going into the orgs after they've been heavily indoctrinated online
Mm-hmm.
without having to go in and deal with all the other crap that's going on in the orgs and everything. So they're
Mm-hmm.
not seeing all of that stuff until they're already well indoctrinated. So they
And
go into the org and then they buy like whole clear packages just almost straight off the bat because, they're already sold on all, basically sold on everything.
now that's interesting. That's very, very interesting to me. So, okay. And this was what you were suggesting or talking about when you were saying they're kind of changed up their game a bit these days as far as how they go about getting
Yep,
people in, is this kind of model. Because this
exactly.
is exactly what the extension courses were intended to do. And it's interesting to me because even in the haphazard way that they're getting them graded or supervised, this activity, just this weekly Zoom thing, that's a bright idea. That truly is a smart idea.
Yep.
Because you're connected with a person, but it's not in person. So you don't,
Mm.
you get a certain degree of that. Come on, guys, keep going. You can do it. Get through it. I'm imagining there was some of that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Lots of encouragement, right?
Even people were sort of competitive with each other as well and going, how many lessons can you get done? I think someone did like 40 or 50 lessons in a week or
There you
something.
go. Yeah, yeah. Now, do you think I only suspect this right now because the nature of Scientology being what it is, but did you ever find out or do you think that there were any ringers in those calls?
What do you mean by ringers?
Oh, sorry. Like somebody who was planted there, like somebody who's not really an extension course public person, but is there to kind of make like they are to excite everybody else. I'm getting 20 lessons done
Um,
this week, kind of thing.
I don't know. I
Or was
don't
that
think so.
no?
I
See, no.
think
Yeah.
the main guy and his wife that sort of took over doing these when I had joined that group. Um, yeah, he's always sort of, going on about wins and stuff like that. So he sort of pumps the whole group up and his wife does as well. So I don't think they really need a
Oh,
ringer to
so they
sort of
were
do
kind of
that.
okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I know it fund. The reason I ask is because I've seen it done, not with these
Hmm.
extension course things, but with fundraisers. They'll have people planted in the audience who are already agreed and have actually already paid, and then they
Yeah.
announce it in the middle of the event, right, as though it's a spontaneous donation to to kick other people into gear. This is pretty standard routine thing for fundraising. That it's not just Scientology that does that, but I was wondering if they were doing that with the extension courses too. I mean, it being a front lines public thing, it's the kind of thing I could easily see them doing. I would have done it as a Scientologist. Absolutely. I would have done that. Right. Oh, I can
Yeah.
go help all these new guys, all these little noobs get all excited about this. Sure. I'll go pretend to be a Div Sixer. Especially since it's an international phone call. It's not like you're ever going to meet me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So this is interesting. So you have people actually coming in fully indoctrinated. Now it's funny because we can't actually say that they are fully indoctrinated because Scientology is not just about ideas in your head. It's about a great many practices and things you do
Hmm.
that reinforce a lot of that thinking. And so before you go to the TRs or the drills or the auditing sessions, you can get a lot of this information packed into your head through the lectures and the books, but I would say you still haven't really experienced Scientology yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm pontificating. What happened with you?
Fair enough. Well, I think they've sort of got a I guess they believe that it's working. Like if the basic things work, then if they go in and do them, so it sort of has sort of softened them up to
Right.
get more Scientology.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could see if somebody walked in there having read 88008, and 0 to 8 and 880. I mean, these really hardcore basic Scientology books that have a lot of detailed electronic stuff and very weird ideas
Like
communicated.
history of man, if they've
And
walked
history
in
of man.
after reading
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Yeah, you just did a video on your channel. Yeah, by the way, folks, she has a channel, Theta Novis. You can look it up on YouTube. You did a little breakdown on some of the some of the nonsense History. I think
That's a
all of us. I
small
think it's
part.
sort of a rite of passage of YouTube's ex-Scientologists that they have to do a video on history of man. You know, we all got to talk about it because it's the most ridiculous bullshit ever,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so good on you for that. So okay, so it's an interesting point, right? Okay, you get people reading a bunch of books, bunch of lectures. They come in, they're already educated. This is not a lot of people, by the way, folks. There's not a lot of people actually doing this, but I imagine some are getting quite excited by this thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people actually come in through that way through Grant
Yeah.
Cardone. So he sort of,
Oh, do
yeah.
they?
So a lot of them, the
Oh,
majority of them, when like they would talk about how they got in, it's the majority of them are like Grant Cardone. So somehow he's like getting them. I know I saw like a thing on Grant Cardone that linked to like a personality test on his website.
right.
So I don't know then if that sort of sends people directly to Scientology after that or straight to Scientology. So
Yeah.
yeah, before people even
Interesting. Okay.
realize, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. So what we have there is Grant Cardone is yeah, Grant Cardone's a real estate guy. He's even I mean it's kind of gross, but he's even been on CNN and major media advising on real estate and rentals and things like that. He's a bit of a con man, a bit of a grifter kind of guy, but he's also one of these hype monsters who does concerts. I don't want to call them seminars because he's got all the show. They're like these Scientology style, large group awareness training style events, right? These multi-level marketing things where you see everybody's like losing their minds and there's glitter everywhere and it's all very musical and pump you up and we're gonna 100x your potential this year. He's one of these kind of guys. He's very loud, very
Yeah.
boisterous, very short. It's very short guy,
Oh,
but
really? Huh.
oh yeah, yeah. I've met him. I supervised him on course. Yeah, he's not a
Oh.
very tall man. So anyway, yeah, good old Grant Cardone, just so the audience kind of knows who this guy is. But he's
Yeah.
also sounds like he's quite a player in terms of bringing in new people. So he's got some kind of effective line set up where he's signing people up for extension courses or getting them on that line. And the way the Scientology system works, if y'all don't know, is if you're a member of Scientology and you get other people in, you will get a percentage of every service they sign up for, as long as they keep signing up for services. As long as they're continuously on service, you're making money off of them, which is why it's in your best interests as sort of their overseer or sort of their support person. They call them field staff members or FSMs. It's in your best interest as an FSM to stay in touch with those people and encourage them and keep them going, especially when they're getting close to the end of their services, because then you get that money, that commission. So
Mm.
Grant Cardone's probably making some money off of all this.
Possibly. I'm not sure though, because I don't think he directly sort of signed them up. It was more sort of through, so I don't know how much he'd
If
be
they're saying
getting, but
Grant Cardone's name out of their mouth when, who signed me up or who got me interested in that, that
yeah.
makes them the
And that
FSM.
was, yeah.
That's all they have to do. Grant
Yeah.
Cardone, just say Grant, just say my name. He makes the money. It's that
Yeah.
it's that simple.
And that group's actually doubled since I joined. So they're up to around
Wow.
250. It was at about 125 when I joined. So,
Oh, wow. So
and a
we've
whole bunch of
maybe there's
people have
something
left
here.
as well. So, but yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay, cool.
So it is somewhat successful. I mean, it's not causing a huge growth, but it's still something.
Oh,
It's more
no,
than what they're getting through the body routing anyway, because my local org would never body route. They'd be like, we had we didn't even have a PES for ages or anyone in Div 6.
wow. A
And
PES, by
then,
the way, is the public officer, is the person who's over in charge of all of the new public in kind of activity.
yeah, so we didn't have that. So the only time people would actually get body routed into the org was when one of the Sea Org members from CLO came up and was body routing people in, who was actually pretty good at that. So otherwise, they'd be like, yeah, pretty much no
Wow.
one.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. Um, Normally speaking, 75% from my time in, what we knew was that 75% of people coming in were coming in through friends and family, right? So 1 in 4 were coming in off the street. And it took 20 book sales in order to get somebody to sign up for a service were the numbers that we would play with. And those were old numbers. Like those numbers were pretty steady because Hubbard wrote about those numbers. One Scientologist for every 20 books sold was the idea. And in order to sell 20 books, you had to have something on the order of about 200 or 300 people walk in the door.
Mm.
Those were the kind of numbers we had when I was around analyzing this kind of stuff back, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. So so this is a whole new interesting thing they're developing. Sort of digital body routing.
Yeah, pretty much. And then so that brings me into, so I was on Dianetics, Modern Science and Mental Health for quite a while.
Right.
But before that, so in May 2022, the person at Bridge, she got me to speak to another person at Bridge. So now I'm up to 3 people I'm speaking to at Bridge, which is her direct senior, I think. And she went and sold me all my basic books, sorry, not congresses at this point, all my basic books and lectures. And then about a week later, it was a week later, they introduced me to another person at Bridge, so a 4th person who was in a different division or different department. So they were still under like the sales and whatnot, which is apparently Division 4, although you guys call them bureaus or something in the Sea Org.
Something
No?
like that, yeah. In management organizations, Bridge has divisions. The CLO has bureaus.
Okay. Yep.
It's a meaningless differentiation. It's just Hubbard, liked his language.
I just remember a CLO guy telling me how there's like bureaus and he was explaining all the different sort of bureaus in CLO.
Yep.
I don't remember much of it, but that's pretty much all I remember from what he said.
Hey, I'm curious. I want to ask you okay, so you did 3 or 4 extension courses, which are like $20 each or something, right? And they're really not
I think
that
it's a bit more expensive because I was doing it through the US. So.
Oh, okay. So like $30, $50? Like how much was it cost? Well, how much was it
cost? I think it was like 40 odd dollars American. So it's probably about 60, 70. And then when I was doing it through, eventually after I finished Dianetics, Modern Science and Mental Health, I changed from LA to, I paid for it at my local org in Brisbane, but then I had a extension course supervisor now at the AO in Sydney. So it was like 40 Australian dollars.
You did get sorted geographically eventually.
Yeah, I was like, the people from Bridge were finally like, you could just do this through like your local org now. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right. Okay, cool. So eventually they triggered on that. So now I guess what I'm thinking is, you're not really that heavily invested, and then suddenly you're buying a full basics package, and that's hundreds of bucks.
Oh, basics and lectures, so thousands.
Oh, the lectures
and then
too.
A week later, they got me on my congresses, so that's also another thousands of dollars.
Right.
And
how did they do that? What did they do that? That's what I'm most curious about right now.
It's kind of hard to really remember, but I know they got me on to 2 different people, and they were just sort of, it wasn't really like a, you need to buy this now kind of thing. It was sort of like this weird double team type deal. And yeah, it was really strange. So to get those congresses, but but it's hard to really say. It was just, yeah, they're very good at trying to sell you on these things. But I have a funny story so in August 2022, so a few months, I think like a month or a couple months later, they sold me on my ACCs, which is just ridiculous since I had been in Scientology for 1 year. So
let me back up 1 second just to get the audience up to speed on what you've just said, because the full import of this is not necessarily communicated with just these words. So the basics books and lectures is, I think, 26 books and a lecture set for almost every one of those books. A set of lectures from L. Ron Hubbard consisting of anything from 4 or 5 to 20 lectures having to do with the concepts communicated in the book. And so you get all this Hubbard lectures, and then you get the books. And that's just the basic books package all by itself. Then you add the congresses, which you mentioned. Yep. Congresses are a series of lectures that Hubbard gave through the 1950s and 60s. I think there's something like what, 25 of them or something?
I can't remember. There's quite a few. Yeah,
It's
something
quite a
like that.
And
Yep.
these congresses were packages of lectures that were put together based on where Hubbard would go twice a year and do lectures to general public, not necessarily trained Scientologists. That's what the congresses, introductory kind of stuff, if you will. And he did this all through the 50s and into the 1960s. So there's a ton of these lectures. I mean, hundreds of lectures are represented by when we say the congresses. We're talking about a lot of material, boxes of lectures. Then, because they're all bound up in these plastic cases, and they're all very
Yeah,
fancy.
I've got about 30 boxes.
Got 'em?
I moved like recently, and and I had to carry each one of those up the stairs. It took me like forever to move them.
Yeah, there's a lot. Because then, okay, so you buy all that. That's a few $1,000 investment
Yeah.
if I understand it right. And then you're such a hot prospect and you're buying so quick that they're like, oh, we got money, dollar signs in our eyes now. I'm telling you, at Bridge, that's who
Yeah.
you were on a lineup. And they were like, okay, we're working this girl. And so then they got the ACCs, which are the advanced clinical courses. And those are a set of lectures again, although there are about 5 times as many lectures as there are in the congresses. There's boxes and boxes of these. And these advanced clinical courses are like the congresses. They were sort of done like through the 1950s, into the 1960s. And they are technical lectures. They're heavy, deep, the hardcore philosophy of Scientology is in these ACCs. And so you got all of it. That's amazing.
It gets worse.
And it gets worse. Okay. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah.
What impelled you to do this? Because that's not a small thing to get somebody to go from a $50 course where they got a book and some lessons they're filling out to, hey, would you like this semi truck? Worth of materials now?
So
Because that's kind of the jump, and that's why I got curious about how did they do that with you? How did they convince you to do that? That's a lot of money.
Well, so with the basic books and lectures, it was more of you're going to be doing these anyway, so you might as well buy the package and save some money. Then the congresses, it was like, well, you've bought the basic books and lectures, we can give you a massive discount on that. You'll eventually need them. It was sort of more like that, same as like the ACCs in a way, but with the ACCs, it was like it was before like Sea Org Day or whatever. Because that was like August coming up to that. They're like, it means so much to us, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I've got a funny story. So with that, the fourth Sea Org member I was talking to, she came up with this whole thing, elaborate thing, because she wanted to surprise the other division Sea Org member. Because one of them was not the one I was talking to, but the other one was, she's Australian, but she's grew up in like America. She was born in Australia, but yeah, grew up in LA, so got American accent. So she wanted to surprise her by dressing up as a drop bear. So I don't know if you know what a drop bear is. It's like
Tell me.
it's like looks like a koala, but it's like it's like a joke. It's an Australian joke. It drops from like trees and attacks like tourists. But Australians really love like just tricking people into thinking this is real.
Well, you have enough deadly monsters hiding in ceilings and closets out there that Americans would be easily taken in by drop bears. Yeah, that's not a problem.
So yeah, she learned all this Australian slang, and apparently wrote this big speech with Australian slang and spoke in front of, dressed up with like she printed out like a picture of like a drop bear, so like a koala, and put that on her face, and then had like put gloves on, and then like had like the claws, and was like doing that in front of like 150 odd Bridge staff members, including the CEO of Bridge. So she did that, presented it. So I got a photo of her dressed up as the drop bear giving one of the other Sea Hog members like a piece of paper that probably said I bought my ACCs or something.
Right.
So not long after that happened, I think about a week after that happened, I got a call from both of those two people. And they were like, oh, someone here wants to talk to you. And they put me on the phone to, I think his name is Blake Silber, Silber, the
Silber.
CEO of Bridge.
Blake
Sorry?
Silber.
Silber.
Blake Silber is still the CEO of Bridge.
Yes. So I spoke to him. So they put him on the phone to me because I had bought all this stuff, and he was like, "Good day, mate." And then, so have do you know him or?
I was there when he was made the CEO. Yeah, I know Blake. Yeah, I was at Bridge for a period of time making books and stuff, and Bridge, of course, is in LA, so we knew all the Bridge staff, and
Yep.
yeah, Blake's second gen. His mother is the ED of one of the orgs in California. Yeah.
Yep. So I got to speak to the CEO of Bridge.
Cool.
Yeah, which is unusual. And then I've told this story as well. When I went into my local org finally and stuff, I would tell them this story and they'd be like shocked. Yeah. So after that happened,
And he talked with you in order to get you to buy the ACCs?
no. This was after I
Was it
bought
after that?
ACCs, and
Oh, he
and
spoke with you after that. Okay.
after the person at Bridge dressed up as a drop bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, he must have been in that meeting and then saw that and wanted to meet me because that was one of the most craziest thing I think they probably ever saw.
Yeah.
Which is why I think on one of your lives I asked you what the most craziest thing you've done for like stats. That's why I was asking you that to see if anyone else had done crazy
Oh.
stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I get it now. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I understood the spirit of the question because I think I answered something about doing babysitting or something for somebody, but yeah,
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Yeah, yeah, I've done some crazy shit. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, please carry on.
So then after that, I actually ended up going into the org at the same time. After I'd spoken to the CEO at Bridge, one of the Sea Org members there at Bridge were like, I think, you should go into, if you want to, we can organize a tour. You can go into your local org. They never ended up organizing anything. I ended up doing another personality test and my local org contacted me again. And then I spoke to them and then booked in like a thing to go do my personal efficiency, the basic introduction course thing, where you watch like a movie. It's all based on the problems of work. So I'd already read that and done the extension course. So it was pretty easy. It's not a difficult course to do.
No, it's basically a 2 day sort of seminar thing where 2 days, right?
No, it's
Oh, it's
only a
just one
four
day.
hour
It's all
thing.
done in
It's
one
just
day.
it's a 4 hour thing. I did it over
Yeah, that's right. That's
2 days though.
Hours
Yeah.
of work. Yeah. Cool. So you went in and did that.
I did that. Then I
And
signed up.
what was their reaction when you walked in there? I mean, had they already met you, known you, talked with you?
No. So the DED for Delivery Exchange was the one that called me.
Yeah.
So I'd spoken to her on the phone. Then when I'd come in, they were absolutely shocked that I had all my basic books, lectures, ACCs.
That's
They
awesome.
were just like really like, wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that makes me feel like this isn't necessarily like, taking Scientology by storm, selling people the basics online. I mean, I think there are few and far between instances of people like you going all in on
yeah.
all of it right away. I mean, even if we said that there were 50 or 100 or 300 people doing that, it's really not that many. And when you look at the whole world, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people might go in on the basic books
Yeah.
potentially, like that would be the most likely, but yeah, a lot wouldn't go all the way to like ACCs and stuff like that.
No. I mean, if you had walked into Santa Barbara when I was a staff member there and had already purchased all the books and lectures and had already been doing extension courses, you'd have to hold me back. Like it'd be like, oh, you get her in the course. I mean, it'd just be like, oh, we'd be all over you to get on service, get on the bridge, and probably want to recruit you. depending on who had the say in what we were going to do with you, right? Depending on what the
Yeah.
what the
So
big wig
it,
wanted.
yeah. So it was August when I went in. I did the ups and downs. After I did that one, I did the ups and downs of life, or whatever, ups and downs in life. I don't
Yep,
know, whatever it's called.
that's it.
Um, yeah,
What do
life
you think of them?
improvement course.
What was your impression of the organization after having read and interacted with the Sea Org, and then going into your local church and driving an hour to get there? What do you think of the place?
Well, it's quite an old like building and stuff like that.
Hmm?
I can't remember exactly what my
First
I think I
impressions?
was just I think I was just very nervous about even just going in.
Hmm.
Like, yeah. But I
What were you
think that
nervous about?
I don't know. I just was. It was just yeah, I don't know. I think because I knew sort of people looked upon Scientology a bit negatively, so I think it was sort of that had a lot to do with it as well.
Were you talking to anybody about what you were doing with Scientology?
At that point, no, not outside of Scientology.
Okay, so
Yeah.
nobody knew that you
No,
were
nobody
you
other
were
than like the actual Scientologists that
sure.
I
Yeah.
had, yeah.
Okay, but you had I mean, do you have a large, small, medium social network? I mean, how do you think about it in terms of your friends, family, that kind of thing at this point, or that
Fairly,
getting in?
fairly small.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think eventually I was talking, not too long after that, I was talking to some people at work about it. Um, and yeah, they weren't really that negative towards it. Um, but yeah, that
Okay. Okay. So because I don't know even what this place looks like. I haven't really looked up Brisbane or checked the thing out, but I mean, I'm just wondering, if you're reading this stuff, like what were your thoughts or ideas about what this work represented or what it could do? Were you sold on it at this point? I mean, you're spending a lot of money on it. Was this something you were convinced was absolutely going to be helping you, or what was, where were you at on this?
So I was thinking basically, I think sort of towards that point was, it could help me with, my past trauma, my childhood trauma. I eventually sort of wanted some auditing, but I never ended up actually getting any auditing. Yeah.
You
So
lucked out, but okay, good. They never gave it to you. Okay. So
no.
basically
So
interested in using this to address your issues.
correct. Yep. So I had heard as well on the Zoom calls, like people, some of them were actually going into the what do I say? Basically going on the bridge, and they were taking steps on the bridge, and then they were talking about wins from that. So at one point, so after my ups and downs in life, but basically I routed onto student hat straight from that,
Okay. Okay.
which the person was like shocked because they're like, oh, I don't know if we should. And then I think someone else was pointing out the fact that, hey, that's actually wrong. That's off policy. If they want to go on a, you know, get onto the bridge or, hire a course, you should sign them up for it.
Yeah, of
So she
course.
ended up signing me up for it, but I think she was kind of umming and ahhing. I think maybe she was just so shocked that I would just go straight from one life improvement course straight onto student hat, because I was hearing from the Zoom calls, because they were doing student hat.
Right.
Someone from there is doing student hat, and then so him and his wife did student hat, then they did Proteas, upper Indoc, and then they went and did the Purif, and then all the way, they're both clear now.
Right.
Um,
Right. So you're basically what she's doing is naming the beginning services of Scientology that are the actual main line services. You have these introductory or beginning level services, what they call public services, like your beginning courses, like your ups and downs in life, and overcoming time issues, or the communications course, these kind of beginning level courses that people do in Scientology that are generally 50, 75, $100, maybe 200, right, at the outside. And that's what gets you introduced to it and kind of like, oh, this is what it's all about. And there's a lot of work to encourage people at those levels, because then you're being primed and set up for paying the big bucks. And interestingly, student hat's usually free with other services that you buy. Did you sign up for a package, or how did
it
you?
wasn't free, so it was
No, that's fine. Have they changed that now?
must have, because I bought Student Hat, which is like $2,500. Then
Wow.
they managed to get me on I bought, so it was like a package, because they were like, the
Mhm.
finance system is down, like if you get this soon, like you can get it, and you get upper end doc that is like free or whatever. So
Oh, how
I got
interesting.
like Student Hat, Pro TR's upper end doc, and the metering course in
Right.
like one package.
Yep.
I think it was like 7.5 grand or something. Um,
And you got a meter too?
no, I didn't buy an e-meter.
Okay, good. Because that's a five
Thankfully.
thousand dollar piece of equipment that is worth about 10. Uh, so I'm really glad you did not waste your money on an e-meter as well. What you just said, that package is your beginning classwork you
Training.
have to
Yeah.
do in order to become a professional Scientology auditor, is what that's setting you up for. It's the training side of the Scientology, what they call the bridge to total freedom, right? The route you have to follow. There's
Yeah.
auditing where you go in for like these counseling sessions, and there's training where you go in and do classwork. And you were doing the classwork kind of route,
Yeah.
and got going on that straight away,
So,
which is very similar to what I did.
yeah. Because it took me about 6 months or more than 6 months to do Student Hat. Took
Okay.
me, wait,
And
I
that's just a
think
course on how to
yeah.
study.
Yeah. Well, I found that because then I had done, I think my first time, like in the course room after, like when I'd signed up for Student Hat, the course supervisor literally sat me down and was sort of almost explaining things. And then basically I would read stuff and then she would go, "What's this word mean?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." And
Yep.
I spent like hours on the first 2 pages. It wasn't even
Yep.
into the course yet.
That's how it goes on Student Hat. Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Yep.
And
It's
then,
always a tough one.
I can't stand star rates. So after I finished Student Hat, I wanted to do method one, so I wouldn't have to do as many star rates. You still have to do some of them, I think, but not a
Yes.
lot of them you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of layers of complexity as I've spent hours breaking this down, guys. That's why we're not going to necessarily try to do a whole nother breakdown on it again right now.
Yep.
There's stuff on my channel where I break all of this down in very, very minute detail. So if you're looking for that, you can check out those videos on study tech and on how courses and training is done in Scientology. Just search for that on my channel. You'll find it. It's all broken down for you there. The Scientology classwork is unique. It is not like anything else in any other place you're ever going to study stuff. Hubbard had a lot of rules for how you go about studying things, and they are pretty crazy about looking up every word you don't understand, or maybe possibly couldn't maybe misunderstand in some fashion. And what did you think of all that?
I kind of thought it was, I don't know, somewhat ridiculous sometimes, where you're like, I do understand this, like, so why are you sort of hassling me and trying to get me to find a word? And I mean,
Mhm.
it's got some merit as to, looking up a word you don't understand, where you're like, what is this word? Like, I've never seen it, to actually know what it means.
Sure.
Like that's handy, but then going through the whole process of clearing the word, it's just it takes so much time, especially then when you get into word chains and you get, you have another misunderstood word in the actual dictionary, and or you try to find the actual right definition, and oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it can be grueling. It really can. You can spend the entire study period, you could spend 3 hours just trying to understand one word. It can be like that in Scientology. You don't make any progress at all on your class that night because you're clearing up the word as. Ever have to dive into the small common words of the English language and grammar and
I think
kind of
it was
stuff?
maybe like one of them. I don't think I really, well, I did the after I did Student Hat, I did the children's grammar and com course, which is like
After student hat.
after Student Hat, yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that
But
that makes sense in the
see
sequence.
that
Yeah.
that course was actually pretty. That course was actually pretty like good. Like it was
Uh-huh.
actually
Yeah.
useful. Because
Yeah.
like I was terrible at English when I was growing up. So
Gotcha.
that sort of really helped me actually learn that. But then that had nothing really to do with Scientology, and that sort of that sort of material is sort of, it doesn't have Scientology words really. It's just look up the words you don't understand and just go through the worksheet. So it's not really,
Yeah,
yeah.
not a big deal. It's far from heavy indoctrination. Some of the basic courses of Scientology are pretty harmless stuff, and the grammar and communication specifically. One of the unintended consequences of Hubbard's system of clearing words and having to really get into the minutia of the language, and you do, as a Scientologist, you really, really do. This is a pretty universal experience for Scientologists if they're involved for any length of time, that they get used to making their way around dictionaries and encyclopedias, and eventually they have to learn grammar because there's no way to get around it. You're going to be checked on these things, and if you don't know them, flunk, right? And then you gotta there's your star
Reread the
rate, right? And
materials.
she referred to star rate checkouts. This is where somebody sits across from you and actually asks you the definition of words in the material you just read. And if you can't give the definition like immediately, what's the definition of the word but here? I don't know. Flunk, right? You got to go look it up.
Gotta
And
go look it up, clear it. I think, yeah, I ended up doing, I think star rate checkout one, I ended up having to do that like so many times because I had to get a supervisor pass. And
yep,
one of the supervisors is like really, really tough. Like if
yep,
you don't even have the right definition, or like, as in, even if the definition is slightly wrong, like slightly not complete, she will
yep.
just flunk you.
That's right. Oh,
So
I used to
tough.
pride myself on that. I was a supervisor. I used to, oh, catching students out was my game. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? That's the way to go.
That's why I would always like certain people to do my star rates.
Exactly. You
Like
want the
pretty
easy
much
job,
anyone but the supervisors would be
right?
good.
That's right. Yeah, I took that shit seriously. So, okay. So you're getting through these basic beginning services and training, but you never got over to the auditing side.
No.
Interesting. Why not?
Yeah. Because I was busy doing the student had, and then I did what was it, the children's communication course. Then I did staff status one. Then I did staff status. Well,
Oh, you
I
joined
didn't,
staff.
sorry, yes. So that's I should go back to that.
Ah, that's why you didn't get in session. They did read
Yeah.
you.
So they
Okay.
did in November, end of November 2022. So I'd only been in the org, what's that, less than 4 months.
Yep.
Sorry, wait, 3 months, is it? September, October, November,
October.
three
You
months.
said October,
Yeah.
right? October,
So
November.
I started in end of August was when I went into the org. And
Okay.
then end of November, I'd signed my staff contract.
See, I told you. I told you. If you walked
I
in there
did.
and like
Yep.
you're at the top of everybody's lineup, income lineup, book lineup, course lineup, staff. Yeah, we're getting her. Yeah.
So yeah, that was I was on student hat at that point. But they were like, because I haven't had psychiatric drugs, I haven't done any other sort of drugs. I think I tried weed once when I was in 30, but hey, like nothing really bad. So
Uh-huh.
they were like, you qualify for HCO. They had no HAS.
There it
So they had
is.
no HCO area secretary who is in charge of Division One.
Yep.
Um, they had none. So they were like, sweet, we have someone that's actually qualified.
Yep.
So
You
yeah, they
basically have to be an innocent little snowflake to work in HCO, right? And work in Division One. You
well,
can't really have
yeah.
had hardcore life experience because it's an out qualification. They
Mm,
have this intense list of qualifications to be in HCO, and you can't have any sort of wild sexual history, for example, or be what would the word be, promiscuous. Right? I
yep.
don't want any promiscuity or anything like that. Uh, preferably virgins. Anyway, yes, and that division has an awful lot of power in the organization as well. So that's where they put you, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, that
Wow.
was where they were thinking of putting me, which
Hmm.
I sort of was, but I never, because I didn't finish staff status two, they didn't officially post me, but I was still getting like mail and like, communication from the AO and stuff addressing me as the has, even though I wasn't officially the has.
Sure. Sure, sure. What
So
was that
yeah,
convinced you to sign up for staff? Because that's a pretty
yeah.
big
I was
step.
about, yeah. I was the so basically the biggest thing they got me in with was the exec training. So they were like, this is an amazing thing, you'll get all the stuff to like clear, you'll get superpower, you get all this amazing training at Flag. It's like I think they were selling it as like a year or 6 months to a year, even though it's actually longer than that. At Flag. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, yeah, cool. So I was really excited about that. And
Okay.
that's sort
You're the
of,
same way they recruited me.
oh, is that how you got recruited?
Yeah, for training. They had a problem to solve in the organization, right? They needed to send somebody off for it was actually for course room supervisor training, not executive training, but it was the same thing. You got to go down to LA. There's a Sea Org mission there. They're training the best of the best, and you're gonna be one of them, and it's gonna be so awesome. And I just had stars in my eyes. I was like, ah, yeah, this is wonderful, right? Because I'm 17 years old and here's all these adults talking to me like I'm an adult and they respect me. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Nobody had ever
Yep.
talked to me like that, So that alone was a selling point for me. What was the idea of getting a bunch of your services for free must have been exciting. Was that the selling point or was there something else?
That as well. And then they sold me on, I guess, superpower as well, because that sounded pretty good. So
Yeah, yeah, I could see
yeah,
that.
it was sort of all of that. And then
Yeah.
our org was sort of one org because we didn't have a day in foundation. We were just one org because we
Hmm.
didn't have that many staff. So they were like, oh, we can, fit it around your work and stuff like that. You don't need to come in like on one of those set schedules. We'll work around that. And then several months later, I get a call from the one of the people in the HCO down at the AO, and he's like, "Oh, I want to put you on a day or a foundation schedule, because my work wasn't really. It's sort of more random and like the way that I sort of work." And then he was like, "Oh, send me your." Like he was basically just suggesting that I get another job. And then he was like, you can send me your resume and I'll go apply for jobs for you. And I was like, wow, this is like just too much. I didn't end up
A
sending
Sea
it
Org
to him. I was
member,
like, what the heck? Yeah.
a Sea Org member in Sydney.
Yep.
How far away is Sydney from you?
About 10-hour drive.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so. I thought it was a far cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is telling you he is going to arrange to get you a new job with your. Who was this person?
I know he's in HCO. He's not the senior has. He's sort of one below the senior has. I'm not really
Right.
exactly sure
Okay.
what his position is. I've met him once in person,
Right.
when he
Okay.
came up to Brisbane with the senior has.
Was he like PPO for the Kant or something like that? Personnel procurement officer or
Possibly, I'm not really
senior?
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have this interesting system in Scientology where they kind of mirror at the public levels, at the city level, at the street level, where you would go and see a Scientology church. They're kind of organizationally divided up into these 7 divisions, and they kind of mirror that at the management level. So you have people at the management level whose job it is to establish, to put people there, to recruit people to be staff in their opposite numbered division, if you can kind of get that idea. And so
Yep.
the management people are responsible. Let's say there's a guy at
Hmm.
Sydney whose job it is to put people like you on the job in HCO Division 1 in every church in Australia,
Yep.
every Scientology church in Australia. My job in management was to do that same thing for the technical divisions, for Division 4. That's the
Hmm.
place I oversaw as a Sea Org manager. So it's the same system, right? LA, Sydney, whatever, same management deal. So they were trying to get you so they would have an established HCO in Brisbane finally.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was trying to get me on either or schedule, and I was like, well, everyone there is not on a normal schedule to begin with. So until
Right.
that sort of happens, well, I wasn't listening. Um, so yeah. I mean, I swear I've spoken to about 20 different Sea Org members. I don't think many public tend to really speak to that many. But I was in contact with a whole lot of people and even more people at Bridge as well.
Yep.
So yeah, going back, so I joined staff in November, end of November 2022. At the same time, they sold me my Bridge again, sold me more shit. They
Of
sold
course
me
they
my
did.
classic lectures, which now I realize, I think Jeff pointed it out, that basically those are already in the stuff that you already have.
Exactly. All of the stuff they're going to sell you after the fact, you've already got it all.
Yeah.
It's
So,
already in there.
and then it gets, so
Fuckers.
then they sell me my leather bound basics,
Ah,
and
of course they
then
did.
they get me to do like a donation to their planetary dissemination crap. Anyway, then another funny story came out of that, because the same person that dressed up as a drop bear, she actually got this is around Christmas time. So she got basically most of Bridge, whoever was at the meeting, to sing the Australian version of Jingle Bells. So, and one of the people in the org at Bridge, he actually called me so I could actually hear them all singing so she was word clearing everyone first, and then they went and they all sung, including the executives. They were singing the Australian version of Jingle Bells
And what were they doing this for?
because I had bought my leather bound basics. So
Ah,
that's just more crazy
right.
shit that they want to do to get
Yes,
whatever
yes.
out of people. Yeah.
These are called oh God, how am I capers? They capered you. That's what they call it. They call it
Mm.
capering people. When you do something they want you to do, it's like a little reward, or it's an incentive to do what they want you to do if they do it before you've, bought the thing or whatever. They'll caper you. They'll get you some special, unique thing or do something that's for you, and
That's what my extension course supervisor in Sydney used to do to get me to do my lessons. So he used to do a bet. So he'd be like, you have to, if you don't get your lessons in by Thursday at 2, you've got to do like a video of yourself doing like a funny accent or something. I never lost. I always won, and then he had to do something stupid. So he did like a rap with like the periodic table, different to that song. But yeah, he did a rap of that. He did the last one he did was quite funny. It was like a screaming goat. So he screamed like a goat for like 30 seconds.
wow,
So it's just random shit
wow,
that they would do to get me
damn,
motivated.
man. I mean, it's unique. They certainly do their job with enthusiasm, don't they?
Definitely, yeah. They
Yeah,
will
it
do
is
anything
something.
to get their stats up.
Basically, that's basically the problem. Yeah. And they
Yep.
will do anything, by the way. I mean, this is all kind of cutesy stuff, but there's some nasty stuff these guys get up to doing this stuff too. But anyway, we digress. So you join staff, you're doing staff statuses. They're trying to get you to be on a regular schedule
Mm-hmm.
because you're the one who's supposed to be, by the way, the person who is setting the whole org on its right proper schedule. Like HCO is the division that kind of puts the rest of the organization there.
Mm-hmm.
And if things are out of alignment or aren't right, or somebody's on some weird ass schedule or something, it's your job to fix that. So that's basically what this dude was trying to do with you, and then get you to do that with the rest of the Brisbane org.
Yep.
We're going to straighten this place out, and I'm sure they had stars in their eyes. I'm sure they were very excited about you because they finally had somebody HCO qualified in Brisbane, and you were paying all this money. I mean, you were hardcore. You're totally in there, They were like, oh, this is the perfect person for this. So how did it all go so terribly wrong? What happened? What happened? What happened
I
here?
think they're still trying to figure that. So basically after that though, in January 2023, people at Bridge again, they're like, oh, we want you to become a patron of the IAS. I think they were
Ah,
saying it was like $50,000. Although some things say it's like 40,000. From what I remember, they said 50. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Like, that's way too much money.
yep.
I'm like, I'll put like $1,000 towards my lifetime membership just to, you know,
Yep.
because they were like, "Oh, we're going to get you to do all this other stuff. We're going to do all this other stuff again," and they were probably going to do something really embarrassing again with themselves. But they didn't end up doing that because I wouldn't put $50,000 in. I'm like, that's just no, I'm not.
What would you have had to done to get $50,000?
Probably get a massive loan, but even then, I don't think I would have. Like, to get my ACCs, I actually got a loan, a personal loan for like 10
Mm-hmm.
grand or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm almost paid off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that just isn't possible for me. And to spend it on something like that, I'm like, no, you know.
And that turned you off the whole thing, or what? How? What
That
happened
wasn't
exactly?
that was, I think that was a lot of part of it was like they just pushed for like money, 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 but it wasn't that was my last straw.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because in March 20, so in like February 2023, was emailing back and forth with that same bridge person. And I asked her like, why did you join like the Sea Org? And then she was like, she's like, oh, that's like a long, that has like a long answer. She's like, oh, it just seemed like the right thing to do, doesn't it? Or it just seems like the right thing to do, doesn't it? And I was like, that is a really weird answer. I was like, I wonder if she's trying to like recruit me. And then I was
You
like, a
reached.
month.
You
Yeah.
reached.
So,
That's how she was thinking about what you asked. When you ask a question like that,
yeah,
she's interested. That's what they're
exactly.
thinking.
So a
Yeah.
month later, she calls me up and she
A
starts
month.
asking me, yeah, it was like, oh, maybe not a month. She was quite busy with like other sort of stuff. It
Sure.
was several weeks later. She called me up and started asking me all these questions, like if I'd ever done LSD. And I'm like, she's recruiting me. I was like thinking
Yeah.
it in the
She's
back of my mind.
qualifying
I knew
you.
exactly what she was doing.
Yep.
And then, so she was trying to see and then anyway, I ended up signing my Seal contract. So I was then wanting to go to Bridge. So that became really complicated.
Did it?
Um, yeah, because I'm in Australia, it's
Mm-hmm.
a bit harder for them to get me across to
Oh,
Bridge.
sure. Of course. You need a visa and all that crap. Of course.
Yeah, so
Right.
they have to get so what because she isn't a recruiter. She's not actually in HCO. She's in Division 4, which is like the sales division in Bridge or
Sales. Yeah,
something.
that's what they do. Sales. That's where they produce their books and also sell their books. There's
Mm.
two kind of sections to that division.
So yeah, so she was actually in the recruiting thing. So then I was getting quite frustrated with the process later on because she was like, "Oh, trying to get me to do like a project prepare and go like, what do we have to do to get you here?" And
Yep.
then she had to look into the visa thing, and then she found out that you've actually got to get approval from senior HCO int or something to be able to. Well, that's what at least she was saying.
No, no, yeah, that's interesting to me. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
ended up speaking to the senior HCO at Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So I had sort of a talk with him. I can't remember exactly what was said, but he just wanted to like get to know me. And
You remember
then
his name?
oh, it was some unusual name. It's not like
Hmm.
I can't remember.
Okay. Just wondering if I knew who it
It's not
was.
like maybe like Hans or something like that. Maybe.
Hans. Hans.
Yeah, it could have been that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know him. He was keeping an eye on me when I was leaving the Sea Org.
Oh.
He's been around for a long time, Hans.
So when did you leave? What year?
And in 2012.
So you might even know some of the people at Bridge
Oh
then. No,
yeah,
I
I
knew.
probably know
Yeah,
a
you
bunch of these
would.
people. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I spoke to him, and then I think they were saying basically that they had to get approval from HCON, so they had to put it forward to them to
Mm.
get approval, because then Scientology has to then apply for the visa because I can't. And then it was all this like really complicated sort of stuff. So it was sort of like then they didn't really communicate with me, and then I was getting quite frustrated because like the person I was dealing with, it's not her normal job, so then she couldn't give me answers because it's not her department, and yeah, it was all quite frustrating.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
at the time. And at the same time as well, I was in a job because I had changed jobs between the last job that I had that I was talking about and then. And yeah, I wasn't really enjoying my job. My supervisor wasn't very good, and I kind of wanted to get out of that. So it was sort of like the SEAL was almost like a way out of that, even though it was not really a good way out of it. No.
Would have been the worst way out of it, but you would have had to have discovered that the hard way.
Yeah. So then they were pushing me, and then the people from CLO from Sydney came up, and I told them that I joined the Sea Org. Then they were like, "Oh, we can get you to do all this stuff in like Sydney." So that way you get all this approval stuff before you go over there. And I'm like, okay. And then I spoke to people at Bridge, and they're like, no, that's not right. Like, where you do the EPF is normally when they post you and doing all this sort of stuff. So I was like, what the heck is going on?
Here's where the possessiveness of this comes into play, where they actually step on each other's feet.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it would have made perfect sense to put you on the EPF in Sydney. You were a few hours away from there. You get on a bus, you pack up all your stuff, you're in.
Yep.
Right. And then they can duke it out as to how to get you over to LA. But no, we can't do that, because if they get her, then we'll never get her, and so they just don't even think that way. It's really quite insane.
And then then I was even getting calls from like the recruiter, SEAL recruiter in Sydney, and I was like, I'm interested in going to Bridge, not Sydney.
Right.
And then the whole like CLO trying to get me to do all these different things was really frustrating, because I was like, one way is like pulling me one way and then the other way, and I was just getting very irritated. I even then told the CLO guy off and was like, could you like not, like, I wasn't rude or like, like insulting or whatever. It was just more like back off type of thing in a polite way. Kind of like, I'm getting very frustrated because I'm getting like pulled all these different ways, and I get told one thing and then another thing. I was just telling him I was getting very frustrated. So yeah, there was that whole thing.
I'm really surprised they didn't try to just come and get you.
Yeah, well, once I told the SEAL recruiter in Sydney that I was interested in going to Bridge, they sort of just backed off and never called me again.
Yeah, so. It's really funny because I would have cross recruited you. That's what they call it. No cross recruiting. She's right here. It's not like Bridge has sent anybody to come get her. I'm taking her. I totally would have duked that out. Oh, I would have told Hans to go fuck himself. I'm taking her, man. She's right here. What are you talking about?
Another big thing as well with that was they had to then replace me. So Bridge was trying to replace me from afar. Right. And because I was HCO and then going to be doing executive training, that became quite complicated.
Yep.
So that also was delaying me from going. So all these things end up being a good thing in the end of the day, because it helped me sort of
literally the very inefficiencies of this authoritarian cult saved you. So that was good.
Yep. So there was all of that. I ended up doing my life history. I ended up getting a copy of my life history because Bridge wanted me to send it to them. So hence why I've actually got a copy of life history, which I don't know if that many people probably don't have a copy of their life history. Maybe, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I got one. I've got mine from back in the
yours.
day. I actually still have it. Yeah.
It's probably the same document.
It's a kind of a valuable document for your life. I mean, there's so much in there. All the stuff I've forgotten, I can just go look in the life history. When did I go to school? Where did I go? What years was I?
Oh yeah, that was, yeah. Who do you talk to? What are your friends?
What was going through your mind when you were filling that thing out? Did you feel it was at all invasive, or were you kind of
I was kind of, I think I was pretty upset after it. I don't know, like not like upset, but just kind of annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with like, all the sexual questions. Like it's kind of it's just so invasive. It's like no other organization asked this. I think even if you were going into like the army or the defense force, they wouldn't ask you those questions.
Correct. Nobody else outside of a cult is going to ask you questions like that, or a sex therapist, I suppose.
But then
and that's a whole
that's
different
different though.
context, right?
Yeah, that, exactly.
Yeah. It's just this weird monolithic organization is suddenly demanding to know every person you slept with and what you did with them.
Yep.
I mean, like details. We want details.
Yep.
It's horrifying. It's so invasive. Okay.
So yeah, I did that. Then basically come when I was doing the staff status too. I actually, because I think at one point as well when I was in Scientology, before I'd gone into the org, I almost blew. Um, like I
Oh,
was getting very frustrated. I didn't have like I was trying to get help from the people at Bridge, and like some of them were either away or they were like, busy or whatever, and they didn't end up answering, except one person finally did, and then she got stuff sorted, but I was just getting really frustrated. So I was like, screw this, until they actually did contact me. And yeah, I mean, I've looked up a few things as well as when I was still in Scientology, um, like
looked
negative
up a
things on
few things.
Scientology.
You
Yeah,
mean
I'm
you
not
started
really,
looking on the internet?
yeah. Oh, yep.
What?
I
You
was
did
very bad.
what? You
So I
did.
looked up a couple of things here and there. I'm pretty sure I might have watched a video of two of yours. Um, But I mean, that was sort of in between. There was one point though where I was just so much into it that as in like into Scientology, that I just stopped listening and stopped looking at anything online
Right.
in regards to Scientology. But I think at some point I'd come across like stories on the RPF's RPF, especially like on the ship where they would go into like the engine room and have to clean something in there and then get covered in oil and have to like wash themselves in petrol or something. I
Yep.
remember
Yep.
reading a story about this. So anyway, on staff status 2, where you've got to go through the org board and
Mm-hmm.
clear like everything. I think I was up to division 4, but while I was going through that, because I had to use they've got a new pilot dictionary
Mm-hmm.
that they're using. It's not been released yet officially,
Yep. It's
but it's
also
like the
about
newer
20 years
version.
old.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've been using that
Jeez.
pilot dictionary for 20 years.
Anyway, then between that, sorry, I'm just gonna get some water.
Sure, sure.
Um, between that and the old green admin dictionary, I was clearing like all the words and all, trying to find all the different positions, because it just wasn't like laid out really well. Somehow I came across the definition for the RPF's RPF while flipping through the pages trying to find a definition. And I
Ah,
read that definition and I was like, because at before that point, I was kind of like, because I hadn't experienced anything in Scientology, sort of, other than the really kind of trying to get money out of people. Other than that, I hadn't really experienced any of the negative things that I had heard,
right.
because mainly it was about the Sea Org that I had heard about. Um, and yeah, I was reading through that and I was like, the definition was like, they would be put in mud boxes and like only given like a maximum of 6 hours sleep. And I was like, crap, like that means that like fits with like what I had heard. So that
Mm.
like got the ball rolling. And then I was like, crap, I'm going to be joining the Sea Org. Then I was thinking as well, on top of that, I had to sell all my things, which, if you're attached to things and whatnot, it's a bit hard to do. On top of the fact that I really want to go traveling and I really want to do that sort of stuff. So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that when I'm in the Sea Org. And then all of this stuff started piling on me going, I don't want to go. Like,
Right.
I don't want to join the Sea Org.
Reality sets in again, in other words.
Yeah, pretty much all this stuff comes
Yeah.
flooding in. And then what really takes the cake is, so the last time I went into the org was like the 2nd of August, 2023. Then it was like the 7th of August, 2023. I got a phone call from that person at Bridge and they wanted to sell me more stuff. So before that though, I told her like on the phone call before she started selling me stuff, I was like, I'm having trouble sleeping. She's like, oh, I can send you references, blah, 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 like help you with this. And then she was like trying to sell me the humanitarian series, like all of the LRH books on him and,
Oh,
about
yeah.
his life and all that crap.
The Ron Mags.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
all
one
of
series.
course, the hardbound ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've shown those here. I've walked through some of those with people. in the past. Yeah, they're extraordinary publications. Let's put it that way. It's like 12 volumes glorifying and idolizing a man who didn't do hardly anything that they're describing in the books. That's what's so
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, it's absolutely wild.
Other than maybe he was a prolific writer, which is the only thing that really is true.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That is, yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, she was trying to then sell me the humanitarian series, and then I turned around and said, well, I'm in, because I had debt at this point, because that was one of the things that was stopping me as well from going into the Sea Org straight away,
Right.
as well as all the visa and all that other crap. And she was like, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to take this with me. Like, how am I going to take all my materials? And then she's like, oh, you can donate them, because she was trying to get me to buy it because of the other bridge person. It was like her 20 years in the Sea Org or something. It was coming up
Wait a
to
minute,
that,
what?
and
She was trying to get you to buy
she was
thousands
trying
of
to get me
dollars
to
in
buy
books to
the
celebrate somebody's anniversary in the Sea Org?
yeah.
For fuck's sake.
That's what she was trying to, and then I was like, well, where am I gonna like? I'm not gonna be able to take this with me, and she wanted me to donate it. I'm like, well, what's the point in that?
Right.
So
Right.
I didn't buy it.
Exactly.
I was like, nah. And then I was really pissed off because, like, at this point, like the week, like prior to that, because all of that stuff about the RPF, and then when I'd be on course leading up to sort of this, I would be thinking in the back of my mind, what am I doing here? Like, why am I here? Why am I wasting my time in this place? Like, I don't want to be here. That's what I was thinking leading up to me just blowing.
Right.
And then that was just sort of one of the final straws to me go, you know what? And then she never ended up sending me an email with any of those references until much later, like months later, when after
Months.
I had blown. After
She
I had
could
blown, and I was like, well, you did this. Like, I'm like, I explained, I literally had told her that's why I was annoyed. And then, yeah, so
oh, because they can't even follow through on a simple "I will send you this"
yeah.
thing, you know.
So then I was thinking, well, you're more interested in money than you are in helping me. And then that pretty much kind of confirmed that for me, because like I was kind of thinking that by that time I was like, well, Scientology just is just, money grabbing. Then you have all these ideal orgs. I've seen videos that my ideal org has, sorry, my local org has done up the ED and the one of the other people who used to be the Pez. They would do videos where, they'd be like, donate your money. I think it's on one of my videos on my channel that I did. It's one of the clips is on that. And they're like, donate money or we'll come to your house. And you don't want that. Donate now kind of thing. Give us all your money. It's pretty much what their videos are all about. Like all those videos. It's like they don't even have any, they're not even trying to hide it. They're just like, give us your money.
Yeah. It's pretty much, I mean, they've been doing this for 20 years, this whole ideal org thing. And so the fundraising is, I mean, is pretty desperate at this point,
Oh,
to get the,
they're still
yeah.
texting me. I got a text message the other day from literally like less than a week ago from one of the people there, from the person who used to be the Pez. And she was like, oh, it's been a while since you've been to like an ideal org event, you should come along. And then like this Saturday or whatever it was, and then she's like, oh, there's a guest speaker by the name of, I don't even know what his name is. I've never heard of the guy in my life. I'm like, I don't know, why would I want to come to a random event where you're just going to try and get money out of me, and then probably I'm going to be hauled into ethics as soon as if I walked in through the door.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this is very interesting. So you just took off. You're just done.
Yeah, I just never went back.
Yeah, there it is. Well, I got to tell you, I mean, to me, this most of this story is you going in deep, but then just as quickly realizing what you were going in deep on. And because of a series of blunders on their part, and the time entered into it, right? They're dragging it out, dragging it out, dragging it out. And the local org, Brisbane, isn't particularly giving you your dopamine hits on a regular basis. It sounds like,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. I think it would have been a lot different if I hadn't joined the
Uh-huh.
Sea Org. And even if I hadn't joined staff, if I hadn't joined staff and I had just gone straight onto the bridge, I probably would still be in Scientology.
Yep, I think
If
so.
they hadn't gone so hard so fast, I probably would still be stuck in there.
Yeah.
But because I went like head first, it was sort of like gets you out
Yeah.
quicker.
No, you dodged a bullet, and it was good on you for not putting up with some of that, because you were pretty all in terms of paying money and going down there and signing a contract and being part of this and being part of the group. What did you think of the group? Did you ever feel part of that group? Were they welcoming people? Did you feel friendly, or did you make friends with any of the other staff?
Yeah, no, I definitely did feel part of the group at least some of the time.
Okay.
Um, I know though, I remember the first time I went to the org, I parked in the wrong place. I was almost parking in one of the auditors, and she wasn't too happy about that and was kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say like aggressive. It was sort of more like quite kind of harsh,
Mm,
telling me, you got to park over there. But I found it kind of like she was quite rude in that regard. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
sure.
But I kind of dismissed it and just went in anyway. Um, but yeah, generally I did. Like, I talked to the Hez, and she was the EO, the ethics officer beforehand.
Mhm.
But then she got promoted to be the Hez. Um,
Right. Which
and
puts
yeah,
her up for divisions 1, 2, 7,
and
1, and
so
2, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that you're using all the acronyms, which is awesome. Um, but
Because I
nobody
got so
knows what
I
you're saying.
used to, well, I used to read like policies when I was like didn't know what I was doing, because like
Right.
at the same time I'm like I don't know what to do, like because I was helping with bits and pieces, but I wasn't like fully trained or whatever in my job. So I'd like read all the policies they got me to read, and then like I'd always deep dive into different things. Like in
Right.
when I was actually doing staff status 2, doing the org board, I actually had the clear cognition while I was doing that. So, because
But
I
it doesn't count if you're
realized,
not in session.
yeah, it does it? Because I was like, even asking them, like, I didn't realize it was until like later on. And then, um, yeah, because I was going through like clearing like as isness and all that kind of weird lingo. And then I was reading some of Creation of Human Ability, which the supervisor had pulled out for me, because like two of the supervisors were like good like that, because I would like ask questions and then they would give me more information. They'd just pull all these references out. Sometimes even show me things like when I was talking about that sort of stuff. I'm like, so does that mean then we like um what was it? So like your analytical mind created your reactive mind. So like you created your reactive mind, which is what I had come to while I was clearing all of those things. And
Yep.
then she pulls out like new era Dianetics, like showing me stuff from there and like stuff like that. So then and then I remember actually saying that to one of the other supervisors, and then another guy who had just gone clear not that long ago. The supervisor, though, she's not clear, but she's a class 5 auditor. But yeah, I was like telling them, oh, this is what I've realized. And then they're like, the supervisor to the guys kind of like, shh, like, don't tell her. Because I mean, like, you've mocked up your own reactive mind. So it's not
No,
quite the
that's
right
right.
words, but
No, that's right. But most people in Scientology don't realize the significance of that phrase, by the way. Only people who have been trained on that material know
yep.
those are secret words, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
special words, I should say, not necessarily
Yep.
secret. But anyway, it's an interesting, convoluted place. Scientology is. I think it's hilarious. I'm hoping, here's what I'm thinking after listening to all of this, is I'm hoping that your story is actually more representative of modern Scientology than my story. Because, as a second gen being raised in it, of course, I walked into the org and I was pretty much already sold. I just needed to do that personality test and really get it personalized to me. And that's what really got
Yep.
me on board. But I'd already been primed for it my whole life. You walked in and you were primed by these books that you had managed to get hold of and read and were, the extension courses and that sort of thing. But you saw through all the bullshit a lot faster than I did. Because
Yep.
because you didn't have, I think, a lot of that second gen stuff, and also because you'd been exposed to some critical things, so South Park, other stuff. I mean, hell, I never heard the word Xenu till I was about 40. You
Yeah.
know, I never even heard the word, like not
Yep.
anywhere.
Mm.
So anyway, so it's kind of good. So I'm really, I guess that's what I'm sort of saying is I'm hoping that the younger, brighter generation sort of sees through a lot of this now, where we in the earlier generations maybe didn't so much.
Yep.
What do you think?
Uh, yeah, definitely. I think it also makes a big difference if you obviously didn't grow up in that environment, like if you got a normal education and stuff like that.
Right.
Because I mean, had it been like something like History of Man and I read, because like I did um when I got out of high school, I went straight into a Bachelor of Science. I didn't finish it though. I kind of failed after like a year. I was doing okay for like a year and then I kind of just dropped out. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do in it. But
Mm.
yeah, just with stuff like, History of Man with the whole evolution thing and like just some of it just seems really ridiculous.
Yeah,
Or pretty much all of it in History of Man.
it's pretty
And
bad.
then looking back in it now, when I'm looking back at like the whole Xenu story with like 75 million years ago when like and then they're talking about Hawaii and Hawaii like wasn't even formed back then and then the volcanoes weren't formed. Like it's not even like it's off by like like a little bit. It's like off by, it was like a few million years, like 2, 3 million years ago, whatever it was when it was like formed. But then he's
Right,
saying it's 75 million years ago. And it's
right.
just, yeah.
No, the whole thing is absolutely mad. I mean, I fact checked, practically every line of the narrative, and
Yep.
it's impossible that it went down the way that Hubbard describes. There's just no way that's possible for a
Yep.
number of reasons. There's no one gotcha. There's a number of them.
Yep.
So,
Well,
yeah.
recently though, I've pulled out the Melbourne ACCs.
Oh, did
And
you?
in it, because that was one of the videos I did, and
Yeah.
he was talking about ancient Egypt. So at the same time, I was actually in Scientology. I was in like another religion,
Huh.
who's like they're a small religious sort of group.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it's like a revival of the ancient Egyptian religion. Um,
really?
yeah, so I was in this group until before Scientology, and then I was in the group. I left about a month after I joined, like as I signed the Seahawk contract, I left that religion. Which I think Scientology then had a big sort of part in that kind of
Sure,
regard, because I was
sure.
getting more involved in that and yeah.
Yeah, they tend to
Um,
encourage other practices.
yeah, definitely. Because I was pretty involved in that other religion.
Huh.
Um,
Is that like the worship of the Ankh or something? What were they?
it's like worship of the ancient Egyptian gods.
Right.
So
Okay. Okay. Cool.
yeah, that sort of has its own kind of controversies in that religion, but a lot of things have sort of changed because it's been going for about 30 years. But
Okay.
yeah, things have sort of changed in that. But compared to if I look at that and I look at Scientology, it's a harmless, like small religion.
Right.
Um,
Right.
definitely in the balance of things. They
And there's
certainly don't
plenty of
control your
those,
life. Yeah.
there's plenty of those. I mean, people, not every small new religious movement or effort to help people or set up some new spiritual system of belief or worship or something. Not all of these things are horrible, destructive cults. Some people are just nice people and they have ideas and they want to share them with other people. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're factual, maybe they're faith-based, whatever. I never had any problem with any of those groups. They all fit
Yep.
under that umbrella of new religious movements that have freedom of religion, that have the right to practice what they're doing, as long as they're not hurting anybody and they're not rapacious, vulture culture, give us all your money kind of
Yep.
people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scientology kind of sets itself apart,
Mm-hmm.
as you've described today.
Yep.
It's so money hungry.
But yeah, I was looking over the what he says about ancient Egypt, what L. Ron Hubbard says, and I was like, this is bullshit. I'm like, this is like really. If I'd come across this 2 years ago, I would be like, what the heck? I'm like, yeah, this is just.
Did you
So
come
when you get
across the
into
stuff?
the,
Did he talk
sorry,
about laser guns and the spaceports
oh
at the
God, no,
pyramids?
not that.
Oh, that
That
wasn't what. Okay, you were
No,
reading
no. I
something
mean, I
else.
would wonder where that actually was. That would be interesting to read. But it was just
Yeah.
something. What was it? He was talking about how the ancient Egyptians used to say "Amen," even though that's a Christian thing, and it comes from, I believe, it comes from Hebrew. So, like
Ah,
it's yeah, it's nothing to do with ancient Egypt. It's they don't say Amen. We've got a god called Amun, and
right.
not that. It's just completely wrong in the statement that he uses. And
You're right.
I was like frustrated. I'm like, what the heck? And then he starts talking about the Brotherhood of the Snake, which is like a
Yes.
conspiracy thing. It's like a
Yes.
conspiracy thing. It's got nothing to do with ancient Egypt. He probably got
Ah,
that from like Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley or something. But I was like, this has nothing to do with, like, he has no idea.
surprise. No, Hubbard made up so much stuff because and especially when it comes to like ancient Egypt, who's going to go fact check that in 1953? It's just, oh, okay, sure, whatever. Yeah, Hubbard certainly had his tall tales, didn't he? Well, like I said, I'm very happy that you woke up as quickly as you did and that you could kind of see through some of the nonsense and that it broke so quickly for you. Because, like I said, I hope that that is a sign of the times and that even with the little bits and pieces that you'd heard about before, and then you go all in on it, and then just as quickly you go all out. I mean, you really did dodge a number of bullets there. You unfortunately you ended up giving them an awful lot of money, but okay, lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
It sucks. It absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
Um, but you did wake up quickly, and for that, that's really good. So well done on your part for doing that.
Thanks. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good to get out now anyway. Like, as in, like, I, regardless of how much money it's, at least I've didn't get in so far that I got into the Sea Org, and then, it
Right.
would have been a lot worse. So
It would have
it's,
been, and
yeah.
had they been just a slightly more efficient or slightly more dedicated in their post duties, and actually, I'm sitting here evaluating them from the Scientology standard and thinking these guys slacked off hard. They really screwed up on you. So I'm happy that that's the state of things because there were a number of inefficiencies and problems and things that they just didn't do what they normally would have been doing, right? And so your distance from LA certainly contributed to that. I mean, it's hard to recruit somebody from Australia, but that's
Yep.
exactly why they should have turned you over to Sydney and been done with it, right? And then Sydney could have come over and smooth talk to you, and that would have been that.
Well,
But
I think
nobody
that would
did
have
that.
been, yeah, I think that
Nobody
still
did
would have
that.
been quite hard for them because I was kind of excited to go overseas and go to a new country, and
Yeah.
I didn't really have much of a relationship with the people in Sydney, so I think it would have been a lot harder for them to recruit me at that point into the Sea Org.
Well, it would have been if I wasn't there.
Yep.
I don't know what these guys lacked in imagination, but I'm pretty sure I could have gotten you. But I would have gone in on a whole different line, right? I wouldn't have come at it straight on with, oh no, you're coming to Sydney and you're going to be on post here for the rest of your life. That's what we're going to do. I wouldn't have gone in like that at all. I would have been, no, no, we're totally getting you to bridge. And this is your first step to doing so. This is how we're going to do it. See? And I would have lined it up that way. So you would have been able to see that you were going to arrive at your final destination. This was just a stepping stone to that, right? Which is how
Yeah.
anyway, like I said, it's neither here nor there. That maybe that would have worked, maybe it wouldn't have, but I'm just laughing at the goofiness. That's all I'm saying here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, they almost got me back in at one point as well after I
Did
had
they?
blown, because they were still in contact with, like, as in one of them, one of the people from Bridge, he was in contact with me, and I told him, I hadn't been back to staff, like I hadn't been back to the org in like a month. And then we had a back and forth, and I was asking him about, like, I was talking to him about the RPF and like all the rest of it. And he was answering. He was like, "Oh, that's not LRH, or that doesn't exist." And then he kept changing his answer in a way. But in the RPF's RPF, he actually said that's not LRH, and that's like a way to break down what is it? Break a human. What did he say? That sounds like someone like how to break a human being down or something like that. As in, like it's not designed for like a good thing. And I was like, exactly.
It's in your dictionary, dude. That's where I
Yeah,
got the
pretty
term
much.
from.
Exactly.
So
That's why I was like, it's in there. And then another email back and forth. I had mentioned the chase wave. I think that might have been the thing that got flagged because it didn't go through to him. It still went through, but it didn't go through to him. So I was like, did you receive, like, it had been like a couple of days and he's pretty like good at replying back. And I was like, did you receive my email? He's like, no. And then he's like, can you send it again? So I sent it again, still didn't go through. Then I sent it, he's like, can you take a screenshot of it and send it to me? So I did, and it worked. It went through and he answered.
wow, what did he
So
have to say about the chase wave?
I think he was like, that was like back in like a while ago, and that those people have been punished and taken off it, and it was like a few individuals and all this kind of stuff like that,
I see.
basically.
Okay. Yeah.
He's pretty new to Bridge, so he's only been there since 2015. But yeah, it was like back and forth, and that was pretty interesting. I know that the DIRCOM is always CC'd in on everything, as in like when you send an email, it's even though you don't see it CC'd in, because I've got a bounce back before.
Right.
I think there must have been something wrong with their server, and I noticed that it was like your message didn't get sent to like this person plus like the DIRCOM, and I was like, huh. So they're getting everything. So they're seeing everything. So they're seeing everything I'm sending to him. And they must have a thing in their system to flag certain words. I'm surprised RPF didn't get flagged, but clearly got they probably.
Well, Xenu probably would have. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And typical. I mean, because that's how all communications are supposed to be routed in Scientology churches anyway. Everything goes through HCO. Like I said, HCO has a lot of power. That's the division next to the executive division that has the most power in a Scientology church. Because that's where the ethics section is. That's where the mail sorting is. That's where the reports are done. And that's where people are hired and fired, is all through there. So they control the structure and function of the org as a whole. That's their function. And so this kind of thing of policing communication is part of their job. I mean, it's nefarious, it's authoritarian, but that's how the setup is. That's just how it is there.
Then I decided I was going to go to Nepal to
Nepal.
visit. Yeah, so I've got my ex-husband's from Nepal, so I went and visited him and his family. I still got a good relationship with them. That was a couple of months after I blew, because I was like, you know what, I haven't seen them in like over 10, 12, whatever it is, years. I might as well go on a holiday over there, get my head out of Scientology, so then they're not contacting me, and then so I can just, I felt so much better coming back, just being out of Scientology, if you know what I mean, and just sort of being out of the country and just, in a completely different environment. That definitely helped. And then when I came back, the person that dressed up as a drop bear, that person from Bridge, we ended up having a conversation. That was the last conversation I had with her. She kept asking me, like, what have you done? She kept being really annoyed at me, like I was hiding something from her, because I was like, I'm not interested in Scientology anymore.
Right.
And then I told her that I read the OT levels and that I didn't agree with it. Yeah, she was not happy. But like as it was leading up to that, it was like she was telling me, oh, anything you say won't be held against you or whatever. And then stuff like that. And then she was like, oh, have you been sending like hate mail into the org or anthrax? And I was like, what the heck? It was the weirdest conversation. Then when I told her about the OT levels and stuff, and that I had been looking at black PR on the internet, because as soon as I got out, I was just looking at everything. She was like, oh, you shouldn't be watching that stuff. You shouldn't be looking at the OT levels. There's a reason why, like, if you're not ready, blah, blah, blah. she was just going off, and she's like, you left staff, you blew from staff, you should have had a sec check, you know, this isn't the right way to go about things. Like, she was just going off at me. And I was like, okay. She's like,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, if
see
this is what
ya.
you want your
So
last words to me to be, okay.
pretty much.
All right. Thank you for
Oh,
telling me that. Yeah.
yeah. And then after that is when, literally, I think that was like a day or two before I went on Jeff's channel to do my story, because that was what I wasn't telling her. So she was correct. I wasn't telling her. There was something I wasn't telling her, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to tell her that.
No, of course. What they are not correct about is not that we have secrets. What they are not correct about is that secrets destroy relationships, and that somehow the phenomena of feeling like people are going to find you out is somehow the only reason why people leave Scientology. Because Hubbard says that. He asserts it very strongly. The only reason anybody leaves is because of their transgressions, their moral their sins, you know, they're what they call overts. And this is an absolute policy in Scientology. It's not an optional sort of maybe it's this. It's always this. And that's why she was going off on you so hard, is because
Yep.
that's a very firm belief.
Yeah.
You know?
And she wanted me to write out my overts and withholds.
That's right.
And I never did. I
You,
was like, screw
you're a
this.
horrible, awful person. That's why. Come on.
Oh.
Don't you know that?
And then I get like letters still from them. I got a really weird letter from one of the people, letter registrar in Sydney, that I just recently collected my mail, and it was like, he was going on about, he's like, oh, what I've heard is that you've been hanging up on people when they said they're from the Church of Scientology and all this sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, I haven't been hanging up on people that say they're from the Church of Scientology. I've been just ignoring all their calls. I haven't been hanging up on them. So I was like, what the heck? I'm like, it was just a really weird thing, like the way that he was just like accusing me of doing that. He's like, can you like not do that? And like it was this big long like email, like sorry, big long
Jesus.
like letter. And I was like, what the heck? And then so I emailed him back. I went and got the email from the bottom, and I was like, I don't appreciate being like, accused of things that I didn't do. I'm like, do you have the dates of when I actually hung up on these people? And then I would go back to him. I haven't heard anything back from him.
No, you're well,
But
once you're on channels, they start cutting ties.
sorry.
Well, once you start showing up on channels like mine and Jeff's, then they start
Yep.
cutting ties with you. So I
I
doubt
haven't
you're going to
really
hear much from
been
them.
with Jeff though. I still keep hearing, like, as in being on Jeff's channel. Probably being on your channel will be quite different then. I reckon they'll probably
Oh no,
start.
for sure. It'll speed it up. It'll speed it
Yeah.
up. But you should have already been. See, this is again a sign of the inefficiencies and the lack of personnel on top of things in Scientology. I'm telling you, this is like for real. The things of your story are very clear indications just how bad it actually is. Because my concepts and ideas of how Scientology runs come from my upbringing and my time in, right? And that was 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Um, it used to be very different in Scientology. And I don't just mean like at the public level, it was a kinder, gentler Scientology. I mean structurally, the way the whole thing runs, the way it is run, was much harsher and much more efficient, much more like you're gonna get the shit done. And now it's especially down in Australia, it's just Slack Central down there, and it's and you benefited from that, which is again
Yeah.
good.
And I
So
think
I just laugh at it.
between the orgs, like, because I even got, after I'd blown, I had the senior HCO in the AO in Sydney contacting me as well. And like, I was like, oh, is this because he wanted to talk to me on the phone? I was like at work, and I was like, is this in relation to me blowing staff? And he's like, he's like, I don't know what actually happened with that. I was like, and then I was like, yeah, I pretty much told him I didn't really want to be in communication with him because I was in communication with Bridge, and I was already frustrated anyway. And then he was like, okay, cool, like no worries.
Right.
But I think between the orgs, they don't. Then he actually contacted the person that I speak to in Bridge through the senior HCO at Bridge about that, which is kind of weird because normally they don't communicate that much between the orgs, like especially not in another country. So
Right.
I think by the time everything gets filtered through all the different orgs, because like, I'm on lines at Brisbane, I'm on lines at the AO, technically they keep contacting me. LA org keep like contacting me as well. Bridge. So like there's all these
Yeah,
different.
it takes a while. Takes a while.
Yeah.
I was getting mail for months after they declared me. It
I
takes
got
a
a whole
while to
bunch
filter
of,
through
I got
the
like
system.
the Impact magazines and all the
Yeah.
other stuff because I'm still technically an IAS member for like
Well, one thing you
another.
can do, one thing you can do that will legally, although I don't know about in Australia actually. I don't know if this would be necessary or not, but something you could do is write a resignation letter and send it to them. I mean, that'll definitely put the cap on it, you know. Yeah, no, just say I don't want any more of this, and I want you to take me off all your mailing lists. I am no longer a Scientologist. I am no longer operating under the rules of Scientology, and I do not want to have anything more to do with you. That's pretty much all you got to say. But it matters apparently legally that you say that, or it could matter, and whatever. Regardless, you're out. That's all that really
Yeah.
matters. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to start wrapping up here, but I want to thank you for generously giving of your time here to share your story with all of this. And like I said, it's a good story, especially because, this is progress as far as I'm concerned in how Scientology is doing in the world. It's doing badly
Yeah.
and it mismanages its own people. And even when somebody is anxiously giving them, thousands of dollars, they still fuck it up, which
Yeah.
is absolutely awesome, right? I mean, that's what we
Mhm.
want, and we've got it. And so, and you're, literally within months of getting out of this thing. So it's if this is current state, then this lines up perfectly with everything else we've always been talking about. This thing is on its way out and it's destroying itself.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly that's the case with Scientology. It's a tiny pipsqueak little cult that is dying off,
Mhm.
and its destruction is built into it. It's
Yeah.
not like we even had to do a whole lot. But the more we expose, the more we do, the faster that destruction, that self-destruction happens. And that's what's encouraging to me in all of this. Did you have anything else that, that we didn't cover? Did we miss anything that you wanted to talk about today? Because if so, I want to give you that.
Not really. Just
Okay.
that basically my local org was very small, like they wouldn't have many public come in, if at
Right.
all, and then even like the public Scientologists wouldn't really come in. I think the most amount of people I saw on course was maybe like less than 15 at one
Right.
time.
Right.
And that was like really rare. Like a lot of the time I would be the only one in the course room. Or you'd have two course supervisors in there, and they would just be one of which is like also an auditor. As in like officially her post is like an auditor.
Right.
And they would just be in the course room studying. So like there wouldn't be many public coming in. I think bodies in the shop were probably between 20 and 30
Yeah. Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
They had over $1 million in advance payments, basically. So money that people had paid for services and all the rest of it, just sitting in the account, and it's going up and up and up and up and up. Never
Oh,
really going down.
right.
Because I used to help with the stats to put him into the machine or the computer, should I say. Um, and then I'd have to print them out and stuff like that. Um, Yeah, I once had one of the CLO SEAL members getting up me because it was after 2 p.m. and she was calling and she wanted the gross income stat. And I didn't have that for her because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm fairly new still. I'm like the ED's running around like a chicken with its head cut off, which is what I was telling her. And she was like, that doesn't matter. Like it's after 2. I need this stat. And the ED was very hesitant to give it to her anyway because it was really low that week. So I think she didn't want to answer the phone. And then meanwhile, I'm getting like yelled at by this SEAL member, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I never experienced anything like that. Yeah.
Not at
No.
all.
Nope. Nope. In Santa Barbara, we had that every week. Yeah. Totally get it. Totally get it. Well, how interesting. All right. Well, like I said, thank you very much for all of this. The
No
numbers are,
worries.
of course, again, confirmatory that there's just nothing really going on there. And the idea that this is some big booming operation is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now you have a YouTube channel that you've begun.
Yep.
Do you want people to know how to reach you, or how should they find out more about you? What would they do?
So if you just go to YouTube and Theta Novis, yeah, that's where my YouTube channel is. I've put sort of an introduction in the as like a writing introduction in there. I haven't really done an introduction video, but I do have an interview that I did with Jeff as well on there. And I've
Right.
done a few videos. Currently working on a couple of video games as like a parody of Scientology. So stay tuned for more of that. I'm still working on a lot of stuff though before I can release anything or even sneak peeks. So
Sure, sure.
yeah,
Great. Well, more power to you. Thank you very much. And
thank
Theta
you.
Novus is the name of the channel, and I will put a link to it in the show notes here today. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Now, I want to remind everybody out there that if you are someone who is in need of maybe some help, maybe somebody who can understand what's going on, if there is a situation of coercive control, cults, undue influence, something like that going on in yours or a loved one's life, and you would like some assistance, guidance, help, or direction on that, you can always contact me at my email address, askchrisshelton@gmail.com, or through my website, mncriticalthinking.com. Links to all of this below in the description section. And on that happy note, we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.